Hi, everyone, and welcome. It is so great to see you here. And I'm just looking at the chat and where you're coming in from. So it's Albania and Portugal and Mexico and Germany and Ottawa. It's cold there. Yes, it's cold here in New Jersey too. Angola, Athens, Paris, Wisconsin, Amsterdam, Switzerland, Quebec. Amazing. Welcome all. It's wonderful to see you here. So here is what we have planned for you, for us today. I'm going to shortly just give a brief, 15, 20-minute lecture about New Year, New You, about goal setting. And then I'm going to show you a short video, which was made by Yuval, our president of the Happiness Studies Academy, who's going to share with you something about the certificate program. And then Yuval and I, live, are going to answer your questions. And your questions can be about whatever I'm just going to speak about now, about goal setting, about realizing your dreams. It can be about any topic within the field of happiness studies, or it can be something specific about the certificate program or even our master's program. But let me start by talking about goals. Now, just to give you a bit of context, there are many definitions to happiness. There are, in fact, as many definitions to happiness as there are people in the world, and maybe even more because some people have more than one definition. The definition that we work with is a synthesis of the thinking and the research from East and West, from ancient philosophy to modern neuroscience. And what our definition of happiness includes is 5 elements. We call them the 5 elements of Spire, S-P-I-R-E. The S of Spire stands for spiritual well-being. And essentially what that is, of course, you can find spirituality in religion, many people do, or you can find it in goals, in objectives, in finding a sense of meaning and purpose in your life. You can also experience spiritual well-being by being present, by being mindful. So spirituality, meaning or purpose, or presence or mindfulness. Physical well-being, that's the P of Spire, can come from nutrition, of course, from physical exercise, from sleep or recovery in general, from touch. This is about the mind-body connection. That's physical well-being. Then the I of Spire is intellectual well-being. That can come from curiosity, from learning new things. It can come from deep learning, deep exploration, whether it's of a text, a book, a poem, a work of art, or nature. So that's intellectual well-being, the I of Spire. Then relational well-being. It's about relationships. It's about being kind and generous. It's about cultivating healthy relationships at home or in the workplace. And the E of Spire, the 5th element of Spire, is emotional well-being. And that's about learning to deal with painful emotions, as well as cultivating pleasurable emotions, like gratitude, like joy, and so on. Now, what I'm going to talk about today is goal setting, or realizing your dreams. And that falls squarely under the S of Spire, spiritual well-being. And within the S of Spire, I'm going to focus on a very small area, very small part that has everything to do with effectively, successfully realizing your dreams. Because, most change efforts fail. People come on, on the 1st of January, New Year or Chinese New Year or birthday, they come up with a goal. or maybe with a list of goals, New Year's resolutions, birthday commitments. And for most people, this process doesn't lead to real lasting change. So maybe they still go to the gym on the, what's today's date? 18th of January. But by the 21st of January, they're no longer there. And they're back to where they were before. Or yeah, maybe they're doing what they promised themselves to be doing within their relationship for 3 days or 7 days, but it doesn't last. And the question that psychologists ask, and the question that researchers and practitioners in the field of the science of happiness must ask, is how do we achieve lasting change? Now, there are a few answers to it, and in our program, we talk about various ways that we can increase the likelihood that we'll be successful when we bring about change. I want to focus on one area, and this specific area that I'm focusing on has become known as appreciative inquiry. Appreciative inquiry. Now, let me in the chat just write it so you can look it up also online if you haven't heard about it before. Appreciative inquiry is a term that was introduced by David Cooperrider. And David Cooperrider, back in the 1970s, was doing research, traditional research, in the area of leadership. But his specific research was as follows. He approached leaders, specifically in the medical field, but leaders, managers, senior doctors, with 4 questions. He asked them 4 questions in his interview. The first question was, tell me about your worst leadership experience. And again, these were accomplished, successful leaders. He asked them the following question, tell me about your worst leadership experience. Question number 2, what did you learn from your worst leadership experience? Question number 3, tell me about your best leadership experience. Question number 4, what did you learn from your best leadership experience? Now, what he noticed after asking these 4 questions to different people, what he noticed was something quite interesting. So when it came to the first 2 questions, it was interesting because all of them had their worst leadership experiences, and they learned important things from their worst leadership experiences. But when he addressed question 3 and 4, remember, question number 3 was, tell me about your best leadership experience, and what did you learn from your best leadership experience? What he found was that just by asking these questions, it helped those who were answering it become more animated, more excited, more inspired. And just asking these questions actually led to real and lasting change. Remember what I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago? Most change efforts fail. You know that as an individual because you've tried it. I've tried it. Researchers certainly know it. Practitioners encountered it time and time again. And yet here, just by asking questions, tell me about your best leadership experience, and what did you learn from that? Just these 2 questions in and of themselves led to real lasting change. And he thought to himself, wow, maybe I'm onto something here. And he decided to research that in particular. And what he realized through his research, and that is what he ended up doing his PhD work on, his dissertation, and following him, many have researched this particular approach and found that when you focus on what is working, when you explore it, what you're leading to is an increase in levels of energy, inspiration, and very often real and lasting change. And he named this with the contribution of his wife, who's actually an artist. He named this approach appreciative inquiry. To appreciate and to ask appreciative questions. To focus on the positive through positive questions. And he applied his findings, and others have applied these findings from leadership. What is your best leadership experience? What did you learn from it? To many other areas, such as parenting, such as relationships, such as, and this is what I'm going to do today, goal setting. Here is the essence of appreciative inquiry. And I'm going to write it to you in the chat. The essence of it is drawing on the best from the past to inspire the present and create a better future. So you draw on the best from the past. Tell me about your best leadership experience. And when you do that, that inspires the present. Wow, I haven't spoken about what I did well or what I'm so proud of. It inspires the present. And through that, it also creates a better future. Why? Because what that does is it reminds you not just of your mistakes. And yes, of course, it's important to learn from mistakes and from failures. One of the mantras that I repeat to my students, to my children, to myself, to my clients is learn to fail or fail to learn. Of course, it's important to learn from our failures, from the empty part of the glass. It turns out, and this is what the whole field of appreciative inquiry shows us, it's no less important to learn from what is working, because it inspires the present and then provides us a foundation that we can build on to create a better future. So let me apply this specifically now to goal setting. Why? Because goal setting is relevant for every life domain. Because I may have a goal to enjoy better relationships with my partner or friend or colleagues. I may apply to becoming a better manager or a better teacher. Or I may apply it to becoming happier because that is my goal. So how do we apply it? And yes, Carolina, it is a very powerful approach for coaching. In fact, one of the books that I highly recommend is called Appreciative Coaching. And it applies to therapy, and it applies to parenting. Let me apply it specifically now to goal setting. And I want to introduce you very briefly, because again, in the program, whether it's the certificate program or in the MA program, we go into much greater depth and we practice it and we apply it. But here is just in a nutshell, applying appreciative inquiry to goal setting. And essentially what it does is it includes 4 steps. 4 steps that draw on David Cooperrider's methodology. The first step is remembering a positive past. So this would be the PP. Remembering positive past. This is what David Cooperrider did with his leaders when he researched them. So think about a time when you fulfilled your goals, when you were actually successful at fulfilling your goals. Most change efforts fail, but some succeed. When were you successful? Or you can even be more specific than that. Not just talk about goals in general, but let's say your goal is to lead a healthier lifestyle. Exercise more regularly, sleep better, eat more healthfully, whatever it is. Remembering a positive past would be starting with, again, step one would be, when was I effective, successful? When did I eat healthfully? Now, this may be just 1 month in, 2003, but it's still there. Or when did you actually persist going to the gym? It may be, 6 months ago. It may be 6 years ago. But reflect on it. Think back to that time. What did you do? What was unique about that month? Or again, you can think generally about goals. When was I successful? Why was I successful? Whether it was a goal that I introduced at work or something in my personal life. Start with the positive past. Stage number 1. Stage number 2 is imagine a fantastic future, FF. Now you've been to the past. Now let's think about the future. How can I imagine myself fulfilling my dream or my goal? And write about it, just like in the first part, you write about it or you talk about it if you're working with a coach or you're sharing it with a friend. What would a fantastic future look like when you're going to the gym 3 times a week? Or, you're eating, healthfully. Or you're, committing to the, 16-8 diet, whatever it is for you. Write about it, talk about it, imagine your fantastic future. Remember, appreciative inquiry is drawing on the best from the past to inspire the present, because a positive past inspires the present and create a better future. That is the better future right now. Stage 2, you're just imagining it. That's all you're doing. After you do that, stage number 3 is grounding with concrete commitments. That is the CC. Now you've imagined the future. Now you're going to do, what am I actually going to do? A concrete commitment is, I'm going to the gym 3 times a week. And I'm going to write it in my daily planner. That's very concrete. So bring it from the fantastic future, which may be, I'm going to lead a healthy life. I'm going to be, to concrete actual goals. What I'm going to do in the next 6 months and what I'm going to do tomorrow morning. Make it that concrete. And then, of course, introduce it into your daily calendar. And after you ground with concrete commitments, then stage 4 is, of course, realizing with authentic action, AA. Now, here what I'm talking about, and I'm not going to go into depth here, but it means doing things that are aligned with your strengths, things that for you go smoothly and relatively easily. This is about just do it. Now, does this process guarantee success? No. Does it increase the likelihood of success? Significantly. Why? Because what you're essentially doing when you start with a positive past is you're grounding yourself in reality. If I just said to you, imagine a fantastic future. Just think about how amazing your year will be, and it will be. That is very often detached. That's why just imagining success in and of itself is not enough. But when you begin with a positive past, you're grounding yourself in reality. This is grounded optimism versus detached optimism. So I want to go through the 4 steps again. The first step is remembering a positive past. That's when you think about successful times, when you were effective at change, whether it's specific change or change in general, whether it's related to what you want to change this year or to something else. Start with that. Don't skip over that, because if you skip over a positive past, your fantastic future will be detached from reality. Step number 2, fantastic future. Imagine that things have gone well for you. What would that reality life look like? And given that you started with a positive past, this is grounded optimism rather than detached optimism. Stage number 3, commit to action. Write it down. What are you actually going to do for the next 30 days? What are your commitments? This is when you write it down. Step number 4 is actually doing it. Because it doesn't matter how beautiful your past is or your fantastic future is, and it doesn't matter how beautifully you wrote it in. Unless you actually do it, not going to happen. So the authentic action is going out to the gym tomorrow. Not a week from now, starting immediately. Now, if you want to further increase the likelihood that you will do it, share what you wrote with others, or even better, go and do it with others. By having an accountability buddy, and this is one of the most important things about the Happiness Studies Academy, is that we have a community. By having accountability buddies, you increase the likelihood of persisting with goals by not 10% or 20%, by 200%. So go through this process, the 4-stage process, and don't go through it by yourself. Invite someone else whom you will be accountable to, and you could help by them being accountable to you. Because we do it better together. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. Again, I just gave you an overview of what a process can look like. And there are, of course, many specifics within each one of those 4 stages, whether it's the positive past, the fantastic future, the concrete commitments, or the authentic action. But even just thinking about your goal-setting process through these 4 steps, sharing it with others on the very superficial level will significantly increase the likelihood that this new year will mean a new you, and that you will introduce change that lasts. Happy to answer questions in a few minutes. First, what I want to do is show you the video, share the video from Yuval about the Happiness Studies Academy, specifically about the certificate in Happiness Studies. And afterwards, if you want to ask a question, you just go, down below to reactions, and you click on raise hand. And you'll raise hand, and we'll call on you, or you can ask questions through the chat. But now I'd like to introduce a video of Yuval Kutz, the president of the Happiness Studies Academy, sharing with us something about the certificate in Happiness Studies. This is a very brief, and then we'll be open for your questions right after the video. Enjoy.
Hi, everyone. The Certificate in Happiness Studies is a year-long program. The program is offered in English, Spanish, Portuguese, Japanese, Chinese, and Hebrew. It is composed of 2 parts, both about the same length. The first is called Introduction to Happiness Studies, and the second is called Facilitating Happiness. While the first part focuses on theory, although it has some practice in it, the second part relies more about applied techniques, although it has some theory in it. This is an interdisciplinary journey in which we will learn the relationship between not just positive psychology, but also literature, art, science, and other fields related to happiness. The entire program has a weekly structure with the following components. First of all students in the same cohort starts off at the same day. And every week you receive access to 4 15 minutes pre-recorded lectures. Altogether, 1 hour. All of the lectures are delivered by Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar. You can watch these lectures at your convenience. It's online, and they will always be available for you to go back and watch again. Every week, students are invited to join a 1-hour live webinar with Tal, in which they can discuss happiness, the topics of the course, and their personal lives directly with Tal. Last but not least, all students get access to their personal life journal. The life journal is a weekly follow-up to the lessons with additional exercises, extra readings, videos, journaling, meditations, yoga, and much more. You get lifetime access to this life journal, which holds the most comprehensive bibliography of research and material about happiness out there today. Actually, you're getting lifetime access to us as well. As HSA alums, you will get your Certified Happiness Trainer certificate, invitations to our annual gatherings, support from HSA faculty and the entire community. It is extremely important for us to give you all the tools needed to pursue a career and work in this field. I would like to thank you for taking the time today and for the interest you're showing in this program.
Without further ado, I would like to invite Yuval, my co-founder of the Happiness Studies Academy and our president. Hi, Yuval.
Hello, Tal. Hello to all my new friends here. And some familiar faces I see as well. Hi, with me. I'm excited because I know this is the first time we meet with so many new faces that we're about to meet so many times throughout the following year, for sure, for the next certificate program that will open in February. But way after, because the live webinars will continue every week for everyone in our community, always. So always a pleasure and super exciting to see the new faces every time and time again. We've been doing that for the past almost 7 years, Todd. This is in February, that will be the 18th cohort.
Amazing. I can't believe it's 7 years. You know, time flies when you're having fun. It also flies when you're not having fun, but when you're having fun too.
I prefer the having fun flying time.
Hands down. So if you have questions, again, please put your hand up. I see there are some questions in the chat. But Yuval, before we open it up for questions, one thing which is very important for me to share, and I know this is something that you and I have spent a long time talking about and figuring out, is the community aspect. Because, and I've said this many times to our students, the material in the program is very good. And, how can it not be good? Because we draw on Aristotle and Lao Tzu and Helen Keller and Sonia Lyubomirsky and Chinua Achebe and Marty Seligman and Richie Davidson, and, the greatest thinkers throughout history. I mean, how can it be bad? However, as good as the material is, it's not the most important part of the program. The most important part of the Happiness Studies Academy is the community. Because, you know, it's one thing learning about goal setting and about appreciative inquiry, which are very powerful. You know, appreciative inquiry is a very powerful technique, intervention. The research on it is mind-boggling in terms of bringing about change, individual change, relational change, organizational, even national change. So it's a very powerful idea. However, what makes it much more powerful and much more important is when it's introduced in the context of a community. Because, as I mentioned earlier, to increase the likelihood of you successfully achieving your goals, be part of a group, a community. If you want a thriving, flourishing organization, yeah, introduce appreciative inquiry, of course, and create a community within. So having a community as part of the Happiness Studies Academy, and you know, we'll actually end today by showing you a video which we just showed our community about what we call the ABC, which is the Alumni and Business Club that was created by students, for students. And the power of the community is what makes the experience unique, special, and very powerful. In addition to the content, of course.
Just before you take the first hand, there were a few questions in the chat. Maybe I will refer to quickly. The first question was when you talked about the Spire. Someone asked how that correlates with the Maslow pyramid, or there's a relationship between them, and how do you see that?
Sorry, how does it correlate with?
With the Maslow pyramid, or how do you see the relationship?
Okay. Yeah, good. So look, there are many different models out there that are about happiness or that relate to happiness. You know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs certainly is relevant. In fact, I see Maslow as the grandfather of positive psychology. The father being Marty Seligman, you know, the mother being Alan Langer. So they're all related. We chose Spire not because we think it's the only model that works. We thought it brought together Maslow and Seligman and Langer and Lao Tzu and Helen Keller and many others, and it brought them together. But as I point out to our students always, when you go out and teach, if you want to teach happiness or you want to apply it in your workplace or in your coaching practice or in your family, if Spire works for you, wonderful. If PERMA, which is Marty Seligman's model, or if you want to rely more on Maslow or Helen Keller, by all means do so. The Spire is a model. It's not necessarily the model. But we found that it really brought together in an effective way that helps teach it and then serve it forward. We found it very useful in that respect.
Another question was about the difference and how to choose between the CIHS and the MA. The CIHS being the Certificate in Happiness Studies and the MA being MA by the Happiness Studies Academy and created by Tal. First of all, the certificate program is a two-course program. It is taken over a longer period of time, each course. So taking over a year is the certificate program. The MA in Happiness Studies is an 8-course program. It's a fully accredited, fully online master's degree delivered together with the Centenary University. The MA comprises 8 courses. 2 of those courses are the certificate program, the ones that I mentioned in the video, which are the Introduction to Happiness Studies and Facilitating Happiness. Those 2 courses, which are the certificate program, are also in the MA. So the certificate program, in a sense, is a derivative of the MA. The MA is taken over a period of about 2 years, more concise. Each course, it's I would say that for the MA you need to work for about 10 to 15 hours a week. For the certificate program, it's 2 to 3 hours a week time investment. So basically, those are the main differences. Tal, you want to elaborate on that, or?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the main points. The MA just goes more in depth. What we were trying to create is essentially a continuum where if you only have 2-3 hours a week, if you don't want to be responsible for writing papers and doing projects, then certificate is amazing. If you want to go into more depth, if you're thinking about getting an academic degree, again, as Yuval mentioned, fully accredited academic degree, then the master's is may be right for you. It's different time investment, different depth. Both of them revolve around obviously happiness, but additional courses that we don't teach in the certificate program. In the master's program, we have a program on leaders on happiness. So who are some leaders that have actually implemented the ideas, Spire ideas or other ideas in the workplace or in politics or in environmentalism or in the schools? So we actually study those leaders. We also study philosophers, whether it's ancient philosophers or modern philosophers from, China, from, the UK, and from Zimbabwe. So we look at philosophers from, the different continents and what they have to say about happiness. So it's just more in depth.
By the way, whoever starts when you start the certificate program, actually you started your MA whether you want to or not, because those two courses are part of the MA, as I mentioned before. And if you decide to move from the certificate program and advance to the MA, then you will not need to pay twice. Whatever you paid for the certificate program will be deducted and counted for the MA price. You will need to go through those courses again, only in the sense of actually submitting papers for grades. You already have seen the videos, you already seen the exercises, you've done most of the materials. In the MA, you need to submit paper for grades, while in the CIHS, the certificate program, it is not required.
Great. How about taking a hand?
Yeah, sure. Well, just are we considering Portuguese as a language? Well, by all means, the certificate program is delivered in Portuguese as well. It's delivered, as I said before, in English, of course, but also Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, and Hebrew. Altogether, 7 languages. Maybe we'll go for the first hand tab.
Wonderful. So Lula, if you can unmute yourself, please. Lula, your hand is, yes.
Here I am. I'm sorry. Hi, Tal. Okay, so my question is, why do you talk about happiness instead of well-being?
Good question. So, just like I said, earlier, that Spire is one model. It's not the only model. I don't even know if it's the best model, but it fits our needs. The same with the word happiness. For some people, well-being is the right word. Some others, Marty Seligman chose positive psychology rather than happiness studies. Others would use life satisfaction. Go back 2,500 years, and Aristotle chose eudaimonia, which is more about, flourishing. Go, few hundred years after, some people chose hedonism, hedonic well-being. So there are many different words that describe the good life. why did I choose happiness? I chose happiness because I wanted people to ask, why did you choose happiness? Which is just what you did now. Because so many of my colleagues said to me, Tal, don't go for happiness. You know, happiness has a negative connotation. It means, oh, I was lying on the beach and I was so happy. Or you know, I had ice cream. That's happiness. No, it's not happiness. It's pleasure. And I wanted to make that distinction very clear. Because if you look at the history of happiness, which we do, whether it's in the certificate and even more so in the master's degree, you understand that when people talked about happiness then, they talked about something very different, much deeper than what we're talking about happiness today. Because a happy life also includes sadness and fear and disappointment and anger and frustration. These are part and parcel of a happy life. And I want to talk about that. In fact, I insist when we talk about happiness to talk about also the painful emotions, or to talk about happiness as much more than just pleasure. Happiness is also about a sense of meaning and purpose. Happiness is also about deep learning. That's why we have the Spire model: spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional. So I'm often asked, why did you choose happiness? And my response is because I wanted you to ask this very question. Because I want to salvage the true, deep, real meaning of happiness and what it takes truly to lead a full and fulfilling life. It's not just a life of pleasure. It's not just that ice cream. It's not a life that is devoid of sadness. It's a life of kindness and generosity and learning and cultivating our health and finding spiritual meaning and being mindful. It's all these things integrated into a whole. And that's why when we talk about happiness, we draw on Helen Keller's definition of happiness as whole person well-being. Whole person well-being, or in a word, whole being. Whole person well-being or whole being. Thank you for the question, Lula. But again, as I said earlier, if you want to use well-being and that's what you want to teach or communicate, by all means. And some of our students have chosen to teach well-being. Others have chosen to teach eudaimonic approach to happiness or well-being. Whatever works for you. Thank you. Michael.
Maybe you take another hand.
Yes, Michael.
Aha. Thank you, Tal. Michael from New Zealand. Thanks for your succinct articulation. It held me throughout, thank God. In terms of, let's say, Helen Keller example of whole being, how can do you have the capacity to celebrate diversity, whether that be race, sexual orientation, age? How do you acknowledge and celebrate the happiness and the sadness of minority?
Yeah, it's a great question, Michael. And this is something I think about a lot, of course. And I've been thinking about it for many, you know, I've been teaching for 20 plus years, and, 20 some years ago, DIE, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, wasn't that popular yet. And I remember, I think it must have been 25 years ago, a student came to me and and she was African American, and she came to me with her friend who was also African American, and they said, "We came to thank you." And I said, "For what?" And they said, "For including so many African Americans in the curriculum." And I said, "Oh, of course, my pleasure." And I must say, I didn't think about it consciously until then. And of course, now, most of us teach about it, think about it much more consciously. And I said to them the following, and I'm still saying it to you today, even though my levels of awareness about DEI is much higher than it was then. I do not include people as content. I do not include material just because it's diverse. I include it because it's good. The thing, though, is that what was missing in our world for centuries, if not millennia, is that people didn't look in the right places. So my approach to teaching, especially the masters, but also in the certificate program, is the great books or great works approach. Now, historically, if you look at the great books approach, what do you find? Dead white men. This is the great books approach, because you read Aristotle and Plato. Oh, sorry, not just old dead white men, dead white European men. And you maybe read, Kant and Nietzsche, and you read, of course, Shakespeare. And maybe you find, Marianne Evans there, who, by the way, changed her name to George Eliot, so he doesn't even sound like a woman, because she couldn't get published in the 19th century under Marianne Evans. So this is what you find in the great books curriculum. We have a great books curriculum, and here is what we read. Yeah, we read Aristotle and Plato. And we read Lao Tzu and Confucius. And we read Helen Keller. And we call Marianne Evans when we read her. And we read Chinua Achebe. And we read Tererai Trent, who talks about Ubuntu, in the conversation around happiness. For centuries and millennia, the concept Ubuntu was absent, unless you were living in Africa, in which case you learned about it from your mom. Ubuntu means I am because you are. To me, it's the highest and best explanation of what a true relationship is. And we draw on Maori myths about earth and sky that come together and create unity, wholeness. This is in our second lecture, I believe. New Zealand. Ancient wisdom that has so much to teach us today. And we also learn about the latest research in neuroscience, because that matters and that helps and that contributes. So the answer, Michael, is absolutely diversity of great ideas, because we have so much to learn from the great cultures of the world. We have so much to learn from modern science. And we integrate it all into whole person well-being approach to happiness. I feel very strongly about this idea, as you can tell, I think, because I'm all for diversity, and I'm all for great books, for great ideas. And historically, we have done disservice to the different cultures, as we have done disservice to identifying those great ideas that can and do make a difference in our lives today as citizens of the global village?
This was in the relations in relation to the content, to the pedagogical content being taught. Additionally, I think the community that we mentioned before, I would say, is in HSA, Happiness Studies Academy, is the embodiment of diversity. We literally have students from more than 90 countries. We are going for an in-person retreats twice a year worldwide, wherever our students are. And we were in Akumal, Mexico, Cartagena, Colombia, Miami, Florida, Shanghai, Mexico, and so on.
Shanghai, China. Yeah.
Shanghai, China, of course. That was Akumal, Mexico, Shanghai, China. And our students, when you see, soon you will see a video. We will end this conversation with a video of our community, and you all be the judge of the diverse nature of our students.
And you are two men in male bodies.
Thank you.
Presenting the academy.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Tal, does the certificate program relates to a therapeutical area? I'm a coach, and I was wondering.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. You know, so when you graduate with a certificate or a master's, you're not a therapist. Having said that, there are many therapists who take our programs, both the MA and the certificate, and then they apply and use the material that they have learned in a therapeutic setting. Because every, and I mean every, no exception, part of the curriculum is relevant for the therapeutic relationship, whether it's spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, or emotional well-being, whether it's what we learn when we have a module on lasting change, or what we learn when we have a module on teaching, or a module on journaling. These are all relevant ideas to the therapeutic relationship, as they are relevant for the coaching relationship, as they're relevant for parenting. You know, as Yuval mentioned, you have access to this material for the rest of your lives. And many of our students, our certificate students, are now going through the program for the second or even third time. And what I always recommend when you go through the program is to have in mind a certain audience. So, for example, let's say I go through the program now as a therapist. And what you will do, or what you will observe, are many tips, tools, and techniques that are relevant for therapy. But maybe next time you want to go through it as a parent, or just thinking about personal well-being and happiness. You will get different things depending on your point of focus. Because remember, reality is a product of both the object and the subject of what is observed and the observer. So what you bring, the mindset or heart set that you bring to the program, determines what you will get out of the program. The short answer is, it's not a therapy degree, but it's very relevant for therapists.
How can happiness connect with other interdisciplinary subjects?
Mm-hmm.
And can happiness be measured at the same? Sure.
Yeah. So I'll start with the second one because that's the easy one. Yes, happiness can be measured. It is measured. We have questionnaires, scales. In fact, some of our students are now creating a Spire questionnaire, which I must say is very inspiring to me to see them do it, and it's such a high level. So happiness can be measured also through brain scans. We actually know today what a happy brain looks like. We also know what a depressed brain looks like. We know what a kind, empathic, or a sociopathic brain looks like. So yes, happiness can be measured. It is measured. That's what we rely on when we provide research. Now, the first question, how can happiness be an interdisciplinary field, or is it? The answer is absolutely. You know, We have philosophers who've been talking about happiness for thousands of years. We have economists today who are talking about happiness or well-being or life satisfaction or some related topic. In literature, just today, so in the master's degree, one of the courses is literature and happiness, and that includes films. So we watched a film or at home, and today in class we discussed it. If you want a great recommendation for a movie, Roman Holiday. It's an old movie that teaches us a lot about happiness. Poetry on happiness. You want a good recommendation for a poem? I'll give you two. One called The Guest House. It's a poem by Rumi, the Sufi poet from what, I think 800, 900 years ago. The Guest House. Look it up. It's on Google. Second poem, Consider the Day Lost by none other than Marianne Evans, also known as George Eliot. Consider the Day Lost. Two beautiful poems that we learn and that are very meaningful for happiness. Any field, you want to study neuroscience, of course it's relevant for happiness. You want to study history? Wow, there's so many lessons in history that we can apply to our lives today. Literature, of course, and on and on. How about we take another hand, Yuval?
Yeah, I was quite sure you will choose also Khalil Gibran. Anyway, another.
Yes. Yeah. So, Madiha, am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yeah. Hi, Tal.
Hi.
So my question was that is the master's program also pre-recorded?
Good question. So is the master's program pre-recorded? Both the master's and the certificate program have a pre-recorded element to it. The readings, of course, you do at your own time. The pre-recorded lectures you watch in your own time. And both programs have live webinars.
Okay.
However, this is an important however. The live webinars are recorded. So many of our students come to the live webinars and participate. Many of our students cannot in the master's program, for instance, because they're working or because it's the middle of the night for them. With a certificate program, it's easier because we have our live webinars at different times each week.
Okay.
So, you may be asleep for 1 week, but the next week it's in the middle of the day for you. If you're in New Zealand, very different time. What is it, like 11 a.m., I think, in New Zealand right now? It's 5 p.m. here. So you have different times. However, you do not have to attend anything live, meaning you can go through the whole program recorded. You have to watch the live webinars, but you can watch it 5 hours later or a day later.
Sure. And also one more thing that I wanted to know was that, is the master's program accredited from which university? I missed out the name.
Good question. So we're working with Centenary University. Centenary University was founded when, Yuval, 1867, I think. Yeah, so 19th century, and accredited by the highest organization. By the way, the same organization that accredits Princeton University. They're both in New Jersey, so it's the same accrediting body that's responsible for them. So yes, it's accredited in the US and by extension all over the world.
So the MA leads to PhD also, if someone is interested?
Sorry, the MA? Through us, yes.
No. If someone does the MA, then can they pursue their PhD doctorate through that?
Oh, okay. Yes. So right now we're in the middle of a process which shouldn't take longer than a year to get an accredited PhD in human flourishing, which will essentially
create our own PhD, which will be a PhD in human flourishing.
Yes.
What if someone wants to do it from, let's say, another university, like, Simon Fraser in Canada, the happiness
Absolutely.
lab that they have over there. So, like, do they
Absolutely.
recognize the master's program?
The master's program is accredited by every university around the world.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tal, can you refer to the what has changed from the 101 course you taught at Harvard, the certificate program? Can you talk a little bit about this versus this?
Yeah. So look, the Harvard course was an academic course. And though I emphasized in the course that I wouldn't be teaching it if I didn't think it could be applied, and my goal for teaching it was that the students apply it, it still is very different from a certificate program. The certificate program, first of all, is a lot longer. It's a year long versus, an academic course, which is a semester long. But the emphasis throughout is on application. Every single week, when I lecture, there is, homework, or what we call home play, where you're encouraged to apply the material. Another difference is that the course at Harvard was in positive psychology. So it looked at what psychologists had to say about happiness. The certificate in happiness studies also draws on, as I mentioned, philosophers or film or economists or neuroscientists. So it's a much broader, more holistic approach to happiness. And then finally, the course at Harvard, the last time I taught it was 15 years ago. A lot has happened in the field since. And the certificate program, needless to say, is, as Yuval mentioned in the video, constantly updated, and we bring in new material, new ideas. Oh, and one last thing, the community. The community that, as I mentioned, is the most powerful and important part of the experience being part of the Happiness Studies Academy.
I'll answer a few questions together. How many students in each group, and are there other dates for the certificate program? Well, the certificate program opens 3 times a year. It opens in February, June, and October. So the next cohort, the one that we're talking about now, and hopefully most of you will join us, is in February, actually February 6th. That is a little less than 3 weeks from now. The next date will be June, first week of June, and it will be the first week of October after that. Every cohort, we allow around 150 new students to join the certificate program, kind of the size of this webinar. Tal, you want to take another hand?
Yes, please. Antonina.
Hi, Tal. Hi, everyone. I'm here to say thank you about courses for Ukraine, resilience and positive psychology. And I'm helping people as a coach in our country to feel better in such times. And knowledges given in that courses are sorry for my mistakes. I'm worrying a little. They are very useful for us. So I'm happy to be here and to listen about your new course. And thank you so much.
Antonina, it's so our pleasure. You're referring to an initiative by one of our students who asked us, when was it, Yuval? Maybe a year ago, well into the war in Ukraine, if we can do something and help in Ukraine. And we created a program on resilience and how the science of happiness applies, not just when things are going well, but also during challenging times, difficult times. And we created a program with our student that I think has now reached, tens of thousands of of people in Ukraine, and hopefully can make a bit of a difference in their lives. But I want to point out especially the initiative of our students, because so many of our students take this material and apply it in the most difficult of situation, in a war zone, and also apply it in their relationship with their child, or apply it in their school, or in therapy, as I mentioned, or coaching. And this is why we do what we do. Yeah, teaching you about the theory of happiness, it's nice, it's interesting. That is not what gets us up in the morning and gets us to work almost literally around the clock. It's because of initiatives and projects and applications by our community. That is what matters most. Thank you, Antonine, and I'm so glad you found it useful. So glad.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have a lot of questions of specific, and so any question that was not answered through this webinar and still open, and any of the questions that maybe need elaboration on, so you can always write to info@happinessstudies.academy. info@happinessstudies.academy, and we will of course take all of your questions. And
thank you. And shall we take another hand? We have am I Jayasri? Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yes, Tal, I'm Jayashree from India.
Hi.
I am on a visit to US for a few months. Very happy to see your compassionate effort for uplifting humanity. And thank you so much. And my question is, from India, from the land of diverse culture and lot of positive psychology embedded in our traditions and rituals, and a lot of social programs like festivals from temples, churches and mosques, and that is a culture of India. So I just wanted to know whether you have included any of this in your course, and especially from our scriptures like Bhagavad Gita. You must be aware of it, from Lord Krishna to Arjuna, based on positive psychology. So I'm curious to know about that. Thanks in advance.
Oh, thank you for asking this question. The answer, big time, yes. And let me be more specific. So first of all, on a personal level, I'm a yoga instructor.
Oh,
actually,
wow.
just what's the time now? It's 5, like 3 hours ago, I was actually on the yoga mat doing my my daily routine. And we go into relative depth studying, for instance, the 8 limbs of yoga, reading Patanjali,
Wow.
reading Bhagavad Gita, of course, reading the works of the Buddha.
Okay.
And all these are, again, going back to what Michael brought up earlier. I mean, how can you talk about the great books in the field of well-being and happiness without introducing what the Buddha has to say about it? Now, the nice thing about research today is that we can also show changes in the brain if you go through an 8-week yoga course, which I find remarkable. Remarkable because until very recently, as recent as 1998, people didn't even think our brain could change. But for thousands of years, people have been practicing yoga or meditation or Qigong. They didn't need brain scans to convince them that these practices led to real, deep, meaningful change. So that is another reason why the interdisciplinary approach, or what we call the bridge building approach, because it bridges different disciplines, but it also bridges different cultures, and it also bridges the ancient with the modern. This is why the bridge building approach is so critical and so important for studying, practicing, applying happiness. And by the way, Jayasri, my honeymoon was in India. My wife and I went there. We love your country.
Which
And
class,
hopefully,
which place, which part of India?
so mostly north, as
Okay.
many tourists. But I've spent so much time in Mumbai, in Goa, of course. But
I'm from
hopefully you've from
I'm
Kerala.
from Kerala. I'm from
Yes,
Kerala, Kochi. It's called God's own country.
beautiful. Haven't been there,
Yeah.
but maybe in the future we can have a retreat there, Yuval. What do you think?
Yeah. Definitely, please. You're most welcome because Kochi, it is very much accessible from mountains and beaches and very cold places in Munnar, and all these are available in in a short distance actually.
All right.
And lot of ancient temples are there. Thousands of years old temples are there, and Trishur Puram is also there. Have you heard about Trishur Puram? You can Google it because it is a phenomenal gathering of people and elephants, and all temples are like that in Kerala. So that is why
Okay.
I was thinking, positive
Thank you.
psychology in action.
Very much so.
Yeah.
History and present. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Tal, a lot of people ask, or two people ask, what was the second poem? I think that was Marianne Evans, right? But I don't remember
Marianne
the poem.
Evans. Yeah. Consider the day lost. I will
Yep.
send you a link. And remember, her name is Marianne Evans, but she went by George Eliot so that she could be, count that day lost. That's why they didn't find it. Here, I'm sending a link in the chat.
Tal, doing the happiness course, what is the occupational profile? Could I support an organizational model of happiness?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, it depends what lens you bring in. If you bring in the lens of an organization, if you bring the lens of, how can this help my company? Or an organization I'm a member of, or an organization I created, you will find endless, infinite, almost, areas that you could apply it. Just as if you'd gone in with the mindset of, I want to apply it in therapy. My background is in organizational psychology. That's what my PhD is in. And I bring in many examples. Still today, I work with companies. And again, the number of places where it can be applied are many. Why? Many reasons. But the main reason is that what we know today is that if you increase levels of well-being, even by a little bit, we're talking 3-4%, what you find is that creativity and innovation levels go up. What you find is that teamwork improves significantly. What you find is that the company will simply be more successful. Turnover will go down. In other words, happier employees are also better employees. You increase well-being in a company, you have a better, more successful company. So it's a win-win for the individual, for the company. And that's why there are so many companies today that are actually introducing a chief happiness officer, CHO. Many of our students are going and becoming CHOs, whether it's in their work as in HR, in human resources, or whether it's a dedicated position to being the CHO in the company, or whether in their work as a middle manager and they're introducing many of the ideas that they learn about. But there is real and important place for the science of happiness in organizations.
Hiral, can I ask you one more thing? This is Madiha again.
Of course.
Okay, so I just like you just told us about the well-being in organizations. So, what is the best way to measure well-being of a company, like of an organization?
Good. Yes. So there are general happiness questionnaires. I would look at the I don't know if they're the best ones, but the ones that I generally use, one is by Sonia Lubomyrsky, and the other one is by Ed Diener, D-I-E-N-R. So Sonia Lubomyrsky and Ed Diener. Sonia Lubomyrsky is on happiness. It's called the happiness scale. And Ed Diener is called either the subjective well-being or the life satisfaction. Both are good. So using it through questionnaires, some organizations are using brain scans. Specifically EEG, which today is a very inexpensive, non-invasive way of measuring happiness. There are questionnaires on job satisfaction. I mean, there is the one that I use, I think Richard Hackman, H-A-C-K-M-A-N, Richard Hackman. Or just general job satisfaction questionnaires. Just make sure that they are validated, because there are many. I can come up with a questionnaire now and give it to you, but it wasn't validated. So just make sure it's validated, and then see if it fits your needs.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Soon to come, a Spire questionnaire for organizations, but that will take a couple of more months at least.
Tal, I believe Vittoria would like to ask a question, right? So please unmute yourself.
Please.
Vittoria, please go ahead. Just unmute yourself.
Okay, why don't we go? I see Oscar, you have your hand up. Can you unmute yourself? Here you are.
Yeah.
Hi.
Thank you, Tal. It's a great pleasure to be here. I have a question. What is the biggest difference between happiness model organization and model happiness, and happiness into the world? Is there any difference between us?
So introducing happiness in organizations versus...
No. So I just want to know the difference between to create a happiness model into an organization, and what is the difference between happiness into the sorry, and what is the difference between happiness into the world, like a person?
You mean individual?
Yeah, individual.
Individual versus organization. Good. Look,
thank you.
Thank you for that question. And it's an important one. When we talk about happiness, we talk about micro happiness and macro happiness. Just like economists, they talk about microeconomics and macroeconomics. So microeconomics looks at individual behavior. Consumers, why do people buy this or that? How is, income related to expenditure? These are all microeconomic questions. And then there is macroeconomics. What's the best economic system? How much intervention by the government? These are macroeconomic questions. In the same way we talk about happiness. We talk about micro happiness for the individual. What can I do to become happier? Well, if I exercise more, remember, physical well-being, I'll be happier. If I spend more time with my loved ones, I'll be happier. Relational well-being. If I study more, if I learn more, intellectual well-being, I'll be. So these are, or if I express more gratitude, emotional well-being, I'll be happier. So all these are interventions that apply to the individual. Micro happiness. Now let's talk about macro happiness, organizational happiness. Let's begin with where I ended, with the gratitude. We have research showing that people who at the end of the day, or teams in organizations who at the end of the day, write one thing that they made progress on. In other words, appreciate something positive that they did during the day. These organizations, these teams, and these individuals will actually be more successful, not to mention happier. Or We know that organizations that encourage their employees to take time off, whether it's to go to the gym or to have a real lunch, not lunch when they're in front of those screens, these companies are more effective. There is place for recovery there. Or companies that constantly and consistently encourage their employees to learn and to grow. These learning organizations are not just happier, they're also more successful. So here you see the parallel between individual level happiness, micro happiness, and collective happiness, macro, organizational, or even national happiness. Of course, there is a connection between the two. And that's why I said you can look at the same study, the same research, and think, how can I apply it as a therapist? Or how can I apply it to my kid or to myself? And you can look at the exact same study and ask, how can I apply it in my company, in my organization? Or as a politician, how can I apply it in my community? Most of the studies apply to the micro and the macro. It's simply the implementation, the adoption is different.
Vittoria, you want to try again?
Thank you, teacher.
Thank you, Oscar.
Thank you, Oscar. Vittoria, you want to try again to unmute yourself, please?
All right. Yes, please, Victoria. Hi.
Hello for all. My name is Victoria. I'm from Brazil. And I think I am the apparition of Maria on the world. And I think I believe in African culture and religion. And I have sure that I have the power to make it rain.
So, do you have a question, Victoria, or?
I have a question.
Please. I have something to say about this, but yeah.
If I pass 30 days without smoking weed, that is my favorite plant in the whole world because it's the Holy Mary. Can I smoke weed on space? On Mars?
Okay. Tough question. One of the things that I teach in the course is that everything is interconnected. So let me connect the field of happiness to your question. It's a good exercise for me. We don't advocate smoking weed. If you smoke weed, that's you do you. We're not going to stop. We're not going to stop you. However, one of the things that we know, and there is a lot of research on this, is that many of the states that we get to through drugs, we can also get to without drugs. And again, I'm not here to convince you to do weed or to try mushrooms, psychedelics. There's a lot of very interesting research actually emerging in that field. But what we do know is that there are certain breathing exercises. By the way, breathing exercises that have been practiced for thousands of years by shamans in the mountains of Peru or in New Zealand. Or through the work of pranayama in India, breathing exercises that today we know actually change the way our brain functions. Very similar to what drugs do to our brain. And I will add, without the side effects, or the negative side effects rather, of the drugs. So yes, I encourage you to try those breathing exercises. And if that means 30 days without weed, go for it.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you.
There was a question to create a community aside from the in-person get-together. So, first of all, we take great pride of our community, as we mentioned before, and it's very easy for every company and university and to say we have a community, and everybody talks about the community, and it's very easy to say, very hard to do. Absolutely, a very difficult task. We are working tediously around the creation of that community. Being an online educational company, it's of course even way harder. We have the ABC. The ABC is the Alumni and Business Club that was founded by the community. And the ABC is being led by graduates and students from our community, and they create activities almost on a weekly basis, definitely a monthly basis. Those activities happen via Zoom. The last activity was the second anniversary of the ABC, where hundreds of people arrived, and it was a beautiful event with where they shared many of the materials that they were adding there, and group and sessions, and there are happening so many things around it. Well, I want to share with you one particular project that we're working on right now with our students. We are writing a collective book. Students are asked to write their own experience and relation. We give direction, and we are writing a book together. We are that will be published under our publishing company. We are also, we had songs that we did together, and with the in-person get-togethers also, it's not just those twice-a-year retreats worldwide. Also, Tal happens to travel quite a lot for giving lectures worldwide for large organizations. Wherever Tal goes, as I said before, we have students from 90 countries. So wherever Tal goes, actually every major city in the world, we have many students around that. So wherever Tal goes, we have get together, not a full retreat of 3 nights, but a get together for a few hours where the students get to meet in person with Tal and have a workshop, a session, a discussion, eat together, spend time together. And we are doing a lot of those activities and those ideas all the time. So there's online activities with the ABC, online activities that we initiate, get-togethers with Tal wherever he goes, and twice a year a full retreat. Putting all that together, managed to create a vibrant community, which is a very hard task to create and a very hard task to maintain. But we work. That's part of what we work. We have people that are director of student affairs and others that are in charge of always creating those bonds, creating those relationships between people. Very short other question before we have another hand up, and maybe that will be the last one. Is there an age limit to the certificate program? Well, no, there isn't an age limit to the certificate program, unless there is an age limit of being happy. If there's an age limit of happiness, then by all means, there's an age limit for the certificate. I don't think there is. We have, I can tell you, our youngest student is 17, and our oldest student is 84. I hope we will be more diverse than that. I don't know. Tal, you want to, and then maybe we will share the ABC video, and we'll end with that.
Wonderful. So is it Shkarupa?
Yes, it's Leah. Actually, so it's my first name. Yes. Hello, Tal. Hello,
Leah.
Yuval.
Hi, Leah.
Yeah. So yes, regards from Germany. It's already 12, so almost midnight here. So it's still pleasure to sit so long with you. And I have a question about the conflicts. So such a deep question of conflicts. How does it reflect in your programs? Like, do you have this specific questions integrated somewhere? And the second part of my questions, do you also use nonviolent communication or nonviolent communication story from the Marshall also integrated or study somewhere?
Good. Right. So, as you can imagine, Leah, this question is close to my heart. You know, the impact of happiness studies, or what can happiness studies, how can it contribute to conflict resolution? And there are a few answers. The first answer is that happiness studies is not a solution to everything. You know, happiness studies will not save our world from, environmental disaster. Yes, many of our students are environmental activists, but happiness studies in itself will not end the environmental problem. Neither will it end world poverty. Neither will it end all wars. So happiness studies as a field is not a panacea, it doesn't solve everything. However, it can help significantly in many of these areas. Because what we know is that if you increase levels of well-being, and again, I'm going back to that little bit, 3-4%, if you increase levels of well-being by a little bit, what you find is you become more socially conscious. You actually care more about other people. You're more likely to go out of your way to help, to be kind, to be generous, to try and solve rather than create problems. If you increase levels of well-being, even by a little bit, you are much less likely to want to hurt another. You're more likely to want to help. So conflict will, of course, go down significantly. Not only that, you also become more open to others, to different opinions. I mean, what is conflict about? Disagreement. Me seeing it this way and them seeing it this way, and never do the two meet. Well, if you're happier, you think more broadly, you're more open to conflicting ideas. You're more open to conflicting positions. You're more likely to be open to others. Conflict will go down. Now, I go back to what I said earlier. We have students who are in our community, who are experts in NVC, nonviolent communication. We have students that apply, that went through the whole program just thinking, how can I apply this material to my work as a mediator, or to my work with conflicting sides, or my specific work as an NVC trainer? And they have found many overlaps and places where Rosenberg's work is enhanced through the Spire model. I've done work in NVC. I've often spoken to my friends who are experts in NVC, and what I tell them constantly, and I've said this for the past 10 years, you need to do more research, because NVC is a nonviolent communication, is a very powerful approach to resolving conflicts, whether we're talking interpersonal conflict or national conflicts. But we need to do more research on it. And I'm sure the research will show that it works, and works very well. The reason why the research is important is so that more academics, more universities teach it. And that so that more governments take it up. And again, whether it's government in the Middle East, whether it's governments in America or in the Americas or throughout the world, it can help much more than it is already helping if it introduces the academic test, the research to its midst. But as I said, many of our community are studying NVC, practicing NVC, and incorporating happiness studies and NVC, merging the two.
A lot of people are asking about the process and the payment and how did that go. Well, what we're experiencing today is actually what you will experience every week for an hour and a half with your like-minded people, with Tal, every week from now throughout the full year of the certificate program and way beyond the full year of the certificate program. Whenever you want, you will be invited for the rest of your life for this kind of gathering every week once you join the certificate program. How to join the certificate program? You go online to our website, www.happinessstudies.academy. You go to the certificate page, certificate program page, online certificate it's called. And all the material is there. Everything that we mentioned here is there. You scroll down to the bottom of the page and you can enroll yourself quite easily to the next February cohort that starts less than 3 weeks from now. That is the whole process. Everything is there. The payment is $3,900 is the regular payment actually for the participants of this webinar. So that means for all of you, you can use a coupon code that will give you $500 discount. And you will use the code 500 live, all capital letters. You'll find a place for the coupon code. You use 500 live, and you get a $500 discount for the certificate program. Again, it's a one-time payment for lifetime access to all of the materials and to these kind of gatherings on a weekly basis. You can choose either, you will find 2 forms there. One form is for one-time payment. You can choose to divide that by 10 and pay 10 equal payments. It's there, it's the same. And you can, of course, apply the same 500 live coupon code on the 10 payments page, and you will get the same discount. Basically, that's it. Tal, I think we should end with, we talked a lot about the community, and we mentioned the ABC, Alumni Business Club, and maybe it's an opportunity to show you a short video and a taste of how it actually looks like with our students and graduates.
Take care, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure, and I do hope to see many of you joining us coming February.
Tal is the master teacher of happiness.
I think he's so brilliant and wise and kind and humble. Everything that Tal teaches is based in science, that it's very interdisciplinary. And I love the fact that we draw on economics and science and psychology and literature and art and just everything as a holistic approach, and everything is interconnected.
You gave me this evidence-based, science-based tool, and I'm always grateful to you. Wherever you go, I'm going to follow you. That's it. You're not ever going to get rid of me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. California, Mexico, China, Greece, Paris, Singapore, Indonesia, Ireland, Toronto, Argentina. Wow, that's amazing.
HSA is not a certificate program. HSA is a community.
I signed up for the material, and the teacher, obviously world renowned and wonderful. What I didn't realize is that I was going to get a community that is so wonderful. There are people from all parts of the world, and it just makes for such a rich conversation. And of course, events like this where we get to meet in person just really solidifies that the community is made up of like-minded individuals, professionals within their own fields that are leaders and want to take this material that we're learning and spread it with the rest of the world. And the friendships made are what makes us all happier in the end.
When you find a community of people who want to live purposeful lives, then it just amplifies the experience that we're all here to share together.